Hey everyone, I'm Lily, and welcome to my next installment into my series of top cards for Commander Cube. So, instead of going backwards this time we're going to be going to the present, and we're going to be talking about the newest set, which just came out, Ravnica Allegiance. It actually has a lot of really cool stuff for Commander, and therefore also Commander Cube, and yeah, I'm excited to get into it. And first off, if you haven't seen the series before, I'm going to be talking about what I think is like the best cards to put into a Commander Cube from this set. If you don't know what a Commander Cube is, I've done some videos on it, and if you search Commander Cube, I think I have a series on Commander Cube for my playlist if you wanna, on my channel if you wanna check that out. But essentially it's a cube just like you would like draft like a pre-assigned set of cards, but at the end of it you're building a commander deck, and then you play with commander and you like play multiplayer and all that, and it's a lot of fun. It's by far my favorite format in Magic. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about Ravnica Allegiance for that. There's a few things I'm looking for when I am doing this analysis. One thing I should note is that I do not include any legendary creatures, because every Commander Cube handles how they do legendary creatures a little bit differently. Some have like a library of commanders that they could do at the end of it. Others, you have to draft them. And I've seen other ways of doing it. Some have like a separate legendary creature draft. But I don't bother with that. So yeah. So I'm not going to include them. Also, just like generally, like the legendary creatures are also a bit more designed with commander in mind. So yeah, I'll be there. And my hair doesn't want to cooperate. Come on, there you go. Also, I don't include reprints. That said, there aren't actually that many reprints in the set, and none that would be like relevant to commander. So yeah. And there's other things to consider, but I'll talk about those things when I jump into it. But start off, we just have a few honorable mentions that like haven't made it into the top 10 for various reasons. First up, we have Guardian Project, which is it's the 4-mana enchantment that essentially, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card, which is essentially what it means in a commander, and honestly cube for the most part, since most cubes are singleton. But essentially, it's a neat effect, and it's very powerful, and obviously it goes well into a cube, but it isn't super exciting. It's just one of those engines that's like, that's a solid engine, and I mean, we'll go into it, but it's not anything amazing in terms of exciting or new. It's like it's stuff we've seen before. Tome of the Guild Pack, which is the 5-mana manalith, but also you draw a card whenever you cast a multicolored spell. I mean, mana rocks are good, but this is an expensive one, and I mean, that is a very powerful ability to whenever you cast a multicolored card. And if depending on how your cube is formed, like my cube is built around 3 and 4 color decks, there's a lot of multicolored cards, so this card is like really solid. But at the same time, it's just like, it's not that exciting. H2. This might be, you might be like, really, this is a very good card. This is one of the most exciting cards, in the set, in this Priest of Forgotten Gods. And, you know what, I think you can make an argument for top 10, but it's the thing that sacrifices a creature, and then you can also make other people like sacrifice creatures and things like that, and you know what, in retrospect, this probably should have made it into the top 10. I think I evaluated it lower before I thought about it when I made this list, but yeah, because it is one of those things where it's just, it requires a lot of other pieces to come together to be really good, which makes me like a little bit lower on it, but it's a solid sacrifice something card. So I could see it being higher, but it's just, it's the barrier is a lot harder to get to in a draft environment where you have to be really committed to that aristocrat style deck. And then our last honorable mention is Kaya's Wrath, which is, it's a board wipe, and honestly, unless a board wipe is exceptionally good, they go into the honorable mention slot, because let's be honest, a board wipe is a board wipe is a board wipe, and you'll want them for the cube a lot. It's just a staple thing that you want. But it just isn't, this one isn't that exciting. And it's also very color intensive, which is another point against it. But coming in at number 10, we have Angelic Exaltation, which is a 4-mana enchantment, which says whenever a creature you attack alone, you control attacks alone, it gets +X/+X till end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So it kind of gives all of your creatures exalted. And, like, for any sort of like Voltron, or even just token strategy, this is really good. And, many just creature-based decks can take advantage of this really well. And the reason, like, it goes in here, it fits into a lot of different decks, and a lot of decks are like, will be happy to have it in it, while still be really shining in a specific type of like Voltron build or things like that. It makes me just really like this card as a both an early pickup to build around, as well as a words and main things, as well as kind of like just a nice thing to have in other decks, which are all things that like it's nothing. There's reasons number 10. It isn't like, oh, I opened Angelical Exaltation, I'm gonna build all around this deck, this card. But it's good enough that it's like you're reasonably happy to pick this up like mid pack or even later, things like that. So yeah, and it also just does something that we haven't seen in a while. Wrong way. We have Cindervines, which is red and green for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, it deals 1 damage to that player. And you pay 1 and sacrifice it to destroy target artifact enchantment, and it deals 2 damage to it. It's just a really nice, like, kind of like Punisher card, where it's like, it's Commander Cube, but it's still EDH, and there's a lot of non-creature spells cast, and this just does a lot of really nice incidental damage. And when you need to, take out a threat when you need a naturalized effect, it's there. And you also get the invisible value of people who don't want to play out their like scary enchantments and stuff into this while it's on the board and stuff. So yeah, I quite like it as that. That said, it isn't that impactful of a effect for a gold card, which is why this one's also quite low. Where it's gold cards are a commitment to put into the cube as well as to draft, because you do have to have that. Like 2 color isn't as much of a problem, but yeah, no, it's just, it doesn't quite, like if it was monocolor, this would be insane, obviously, but it's not quite there to be like just this amazing card. It's just one of those things that's like, almost any Gruul deck is happy to pick this up. Verity Circle, which is 2 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. And you pay 4 and blue to tap target creature without flying. So in many ways, that's kind of like pay 5 tap creature, draw a card. And honestly, this is just one of those cards which there's a lot of creatures. There's mana dorks, there's like utility creatures and things like that, and usually this will draw like at least a few cards over the course of a game, and it's just a real solid kind of a card advantage engine. Like, there is the problem where like your opponents have control over when it happens, but it still does, can do a lot of work and be a really good card draw engine in blue. Yeah, it's also a very kind of like unique thing where it's kind of like, it's like a blue tax effect, but it's like you're getting the benefit from it, so. Hero of Precinct 1, which is 1 and a white for 2/2, and whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 1/1 human token. Again, it's a token enabler, and it's just one of those things where it's like getting 1/1s off of your spells is just a really nice effect. Like, I love Oketra's Monument in Commander Cube, which is whenever you cast a creature spell, you get a 1/1 with Vigilance, and I don't think this is quite as good as that. Like, it requires multicolored spells and things like that, but it's just kind of like a cheap, like, come down token enabler for the token deck or any sort of like go wide deck. I really like it. And also like kind of like the synergies of like paying off being in like playing multicolored spells and whatnot, especially since Commander Cube, most Commander Cubes you'll end up being on average a 3-color deck. or like a 2.5 color deck. So yeah, especially in mine where there's a lot of gold cards. I really like Hero. Smothering Tithe. This was originally higher up on the list, but after myself and some other people have done testing with it, it just hasn't been the amazing thing that like quite everyone thought it would be, like just from my experience. But it is a 4-mana enchantment, which whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you may create a colorless treasure artifact with sacrifice this token, add 1 mana of any color. So it's mono-white ramp, and it can actually do a fair bit of ramp too. The thing is just that it is a 4-mana ramp spell that doesn't give you the mana immediately. There is some amount of control, where obviously it's great if you have anything to do with artifacts and you care about like getting more artifacts and things like that. But it's by no means like this amazing like card which will like win. Like it's not the be-all end-all solution to white ramp that we've been looking for, as well as like you're not usually running like mono white or Boros in Commander Cube that you need to like really overcome ramp. Like ramp is I think the easiest problem to overcome in Commander Cube. But yeah. That said, it is still a really solid card and something that like helps white give that leg up. So yeah. It just isn't quite as like amazing as I thought it would be. Rampage of the Clans, which is a 3 and a green for an instant. Destroy all artifacts and enchantments. For each permanent destroyed this way, its controller creates a 3/3 centaur token. It makes a purify effect for 4 mana, and sure everyone gets a centaur, but like I really love that this is at instant speed. That's really what like gives this card for me, where it's like a lot of things like purify and stuff, like they're good cards and they're decent, like when you can control them, but it doesn't stop your opponent from like comboing off or getting like some cool synergy going. And the fact that it's instant speed and can be used to disrupt those things is really nice. So I just really like Rampage of the Clans quite a bit. Just there's not much to say. It's just like it's just such a very unique kind of like it's not a board wipe because it only hits like artifacts and enchantments, but like it's a really neat like mass naturalize that yeah. Mirror Match. Of course, the 6-mana enchantment that does nothing to affect the board state when it comes down is on this list, because I love my 6-mana red enchantments that don't affect board state. But 6 mana, whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, flip a coin until you lose a flip. For each flip you win, create a token that's a copy of that creature, making haste and exile to be your next end step. It's just a really fun card, and it just creates some really cool experiences. And like when I talk about when like choosing cards, they are like, what are cards that will create a good experience for the entire table? Like, it's one of those really memorable and like awesome experiences when like that person does play like Avenger of Zendikar and then wins 3 flips in a row, and it's like it's creating those like really like impactful like experiences and memories that like I'm looking for when designing a cube and things like that. And Mirror Match March has that there where unlike 2-player 6-0 construction magic where it's like you want to reduce variance wherever you can, I do like these like subtle amounts of variance in Commander Cube, because it's a naturally very high variance format, and that's kind of the beauty of it, where yeah, you might lose to this card, but this is kind of one of those fun cards to lose to, and as well as to play and things like that, and I really enjoy it. Next up is the card that everyone's talking about. It's Wilderness Reclamation, which is a 4-mana enchantment that be for instep, untap all lands you control. It's just a very powerful card. Like, there's nothing like too like flashy or amazing. It's just raw power level is there, and so many decks can utilize this in so many different ways. And yeah, there's not much to say about it. Like, it doubles all your mana in a very unique way, and obviously you need to have like instant speed stuff to be able to utilize it, but yeah, no, I really like Wilderness Reclamation. it's one of those cards which you will pick up early and be really happy to then like figure out like what instant speed stuff to utilize that, and yeah. Biomancer's Familiar, which is blue and a green for a 2/2. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost 2 less to activate, and you can't reduce it to less than 1 mana or things like that. And you can also tap it to allow things to adapt more than once, but you're mostly using this as a creature training ground. And while this doesn't go into every deck, this is one of those cards which you're really excited to pick up, because it's like, either if you already have something like that already cares about this, or if it's just like, I'm picking up Biomancer's Familiar early, and I'm going to do something cool with it. And that's really like the one experience I want to like have people like come back from when it comes to like come back from a draft to like my cube, which is like, I want to be like, I made something cool, or made something like, even if they don't necessarily like live the dream or whatever, but it's like, yeah. And this is just one of those things that enables one of those like really cool things, and it's like this combo piece that requires other pieces to put together, but it's like generic enough that can fit into a lot of different things. So I think that makes sense. That makes sense. But yeah, I mean, the adapt clause again is very much not that relevant. Like, for the most part, a lot of the adapt creatures aren't actually that good in EDH, unless you're there for another ability. Like, adapt just isn't that relevant of ability. But yeah. And finally, for number 1, we have Rhythm of the Wild, which is 1 red and green for an enchantment. Creatures spells you control cannot be countered. Non-token creatures you control have a riot, so enter battlefield with +1/+1 counter or haste. Now, when I talk about like cards that like, especially when I'm talking about 2-color cards, which is like, they need to be super impactful. Like, especially if you're like not going for like a 3-color cube, especially if you're going for like a 2-color cube or something like that, where it's like, you wouldn't like have this card and have it be just like, this card is going to be the card that will like, am I happy to first pick this? And honestly, Rhythm of the Wild has such great power level all together, where it's like 1 red green, creatures have haste, like if you need to, or counters if you care about counter themes. So it's an haste enabler in that deck, it's a counter enabler in the counters deck if you care about that or things like that. But and just making your stuff uncounterable, and the fact that it's an enchantment, which isn't the easiest thing to deal with, is just overall like, this is just such a powerhouse. And it doesn't win a game on its own, but it just enables winning games very easily. And it's just one of those cards which, I don't know, it's I mean, I like my enchantments, like, this set has a lot of enchantments, but I don't know, there's not much to say about this besides just that I try to avoid just raw power level, but this is one that's just there on raw power level, but it's like raw power level without being backbreaking for anyone playing against it. But yeah. Also, I really like Riot as a mechanic. But yeah. No, but that's it for my top 10. I think it's very arguable that you could rearrange some of these. I feel like I would have, in retrospect, I think I would have brought Priest of Forgotten Rite back into it, but I didn't think about that until I was halfway through recording this, so I'm not doing that. But that said, like, I actually had to cut a lot. There were a lot of potential candidates in this one, like Hydroid Grassus, which is just real solid regardless, and a lot of other cards which are just really neat, like concepts and things like that. Theater of Horrors, kind of like that weird Phyrexian arena and things like that, where it's just, there were so many really cool things that just couldn't make it onto this list. That's one of the reasons I was like, I was really excited to be able to like get a box for it, because it was so much stuff that I was able to, from the set, to go into it. And yeah, I'm just rambling. But yeah, but let me know, like, do you think that I like undervalued any of these or overvalued any of them? And yeah, no, it's it's interesting. Like, I'm planning on doing less of these videos. Like, I'm still gonna keep doing this series, but I'll probably be doing them a little bit less often. But, yeah. Because I still love Commander Cube, and I still want to make content about Commander Cube, even though it's very niche. But, I just love it so much. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say it's my favorite format, and if you ever get the chance to play Commander Cube, take it. It is awesome and amazing. So, yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a wonderful night. And as always, may your stories smile upon you.